Hello everyone and welcome to Shooting the Gaps. My name is Seeker and I'm here to show you a video that exemplifies a lot of the reasons for me doing this. The easiest reason for building this channel is that I wanted to talk about things I wanted to talk about. I guess most people want to do that. The bigger reason for doing this is religion and how it affects the way people think. Now, religion isn't a problem on its own, but when the reasoning used to believe something religious is applied to something scientific or just legal law, it can become a problem. But then my father sent me a video that was supposed to explain why Trump had a following. And it wasn't long into this that I realized how much of a problem the religious element of the pro-Trump movement would be. This video is Trump's virtues, and if you're like me, you're wondering what virtues he could possibly have, we also should be worried, because many of the things touted as a virtue aren't. This is put out by Tom Kingston. I think Tom is really Thomas. It starts at the start of this. Let's see. Oh yeah. Music. So dramatic.
Many leading Republicans.
Thomas Kingston, chairman of the Claremont Institute. If you're like me, you're wondering, what is the Claremont Institute? And I could go deep into what it is, but I just want to focus on one part of what they do. In order to return to limited government, they intend to teach and promote philosophical reasoning. Under the What We Do, the very first thing they say is, we teach and we write. Their primary goal appears to be teaching others to think like them and to reason like them. And Thomas is apparently the chairman. This is a problem because they're making more people who think like him. And that's pretty much all I need to know about these people. There's that. Now, rather than playing the whole video, because I'll end up ranting about a lot of it if I do that, I will be playing clips from the video and try my best to focus on my problem. May not happen, but we'll see. This first part is important, so I'm going to play it, and I think it exemplifies the issue with this movement, this guy's beliefs about it. But, because we've already had one look at it, and how slow he talks, I'm gonna bump it up to 1.5 for the rest of the clips. Also, I forgot to open up the tabs when I first started recording. Whoopsies!
They tell us lies, and they silence those who challenge the lies. Like most totalitarian regimes, they have a scapegoat, white male.
Really?
They have a narrative. America is systemically racist. And they have a utopian vision of society where all identity groups are equal in all areas of American life.
Did you notice that? Equality is a utopian idea, an ideal of totalitarians and liars. Now, there are several things that could be said about this clip, and I could probably make an entire video about those things, but I want to focus on this utopian ideal. How many people have read a book about a utopia, watched a movie about a utopia, where it isn't based on a cursed child, where evil isn't the main point of the issue, of the utopia, where it can't be brought down because of something terrible. This is why he's using this word. Not only does it suggest it can't be done and you can't save, or you can't achieve it, but it also suggests that there is a dark underpinnings, because that's how people view utopias. Oh yeah, can't forget this. This utopian ideal and this liar and this totalitarian arguments are important as we dig into Trump's virtues. Okay, let's move to the next clip.
Trump is a manly man. In
Really?
present time, when manhood is being stripped of its masculinity, traditional manhood, even when flawed, is absolutely essential.
Traditional manhood, even when flawed, is absolutely essential. So for a person who's trying to talk about make America great again, he doesn't want to make manhood great again. Laws and all, it's essential. So we have a lot to talk about here, obviously. I mean, most people are going to be like, I'm not so certain I'd call Trump a good role model. Obviously, this is a recording of Trump's less than stellar communication about women. It's only one example. There are many more examples. But I thought it was a good thing to look at. So, here we go. Oh, and if you don't want to listen to this, given what he says, feel free to skip to the next time I go back to, I'll try to figure out how to find,
Your star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab him by the pussy. You can do anything.
Those legs, all I can see is the legs.
No, it looks good.
Come on, shorty.
Ooh, nice legs, huh?
Oof, get out of the way, hon. That's good legs.
So, yeah. Let's switch back to not looking at Trump. The guy who says this kind of thing can do anything he wants. Now, obviously, he was talking about he can do anything he wants because, of course, he's a star. But honestly, do we want this person to be a role model? Even for manly men, assuming manly men is a thing. I'm not certain what else there is to say here except for just to point out I wouldn't want to be around him, and I'm 100% certain he's not a good role model for anything. In the full recording, he's also clear he's talking about his power, his money. Do we want people with that type of political influence and money to be able to think about how they can use that to get what they want sexually? I say no, and I hope the rest of you do too. There could be a valid debate about how gender roles are developing in modern society, and whether or not we even need the protector type that the manly men are usually said to be. But notice there's no acknowledgement that there could be a problem here. There's no acknowledgement of an issue. After all, equality is a utopian lie to totalitarians. At least that is the implication given earlier in this video, if you want to call it that. Seconds later, Tom had this to say.
Trump ripped apart people he thought were weak. Sometimes he went overboard. But his supporters excused his excesses because strength is in such short supply. Trump.
So, his supporters excused Trump ripping apart the weak, which is in excess, because strength, or something like it, is in short supply. Here's the definition of a bully. Especially one who is habitually cruel, insulting, or threatening to others who are weaker, smaller, or in some way vulnerable. Sound like Trump to you? Because it sounds like Trump to me. And honestly, he said, ripped apart the weak. Would that be habitually cruel? From this definition, are we saying that Trump's movement idolizes bullies? Probably not. Because let's be honest, they don't think he's a bully. And that's the big problem, is they do seem to be saying that his bully behavior is perfectly fine. And that's a problem, at least for me. I wouldn't be so hard on this point Except the only reason Tom, an obvious supporter of Trump, gives for these actions is victims were weak. Now, he might have other reasons that he didn't say, but from this point, we have to assume that might makes right in this man's world. By Tom's definition here, Trump is at best not weak, and at worst trying to hide a weakness. I won't claim which one it is, but he hasn't provided evidence of any actual strength. Things don't get better from here. In fact, well, let's just see.
Trump plays to win. When you're in the right, you have a moral duty not just to fight, but to win.
First things first, you have a moral duty if you're right. So, how do you know if you're right? I believe that causing harm, emotional harm, physical harm, doesn't matter, is wrong. Does that mean I have a moral duty to win the fight for trans rights? I would say yes, but I'm not certain it's a duty. I would like to win it, but I don't know enough about philosophy to argue that it's a duty. And I'm sure he would disagree. So again, how do we know we're right? And a little bit more, and then we're done with this clip.
And sometimes that means doing distasteful things.
So sometimes to win, you have to do distasteful things. Does that mean you have to lie sometimes to win? I don't know. If you're in the right, do you really have to lie? I don't think you do. And you'll notice that if you're doing distasteful things and someone finds out, you're providing ammunition to argue that you're not, in fact, in the right. I would argue to know that if you're in the right, you would need evidence. But, as we've heard so far, and for the full video, if you decide to read it, no evidence is given. He never cites anyone, never points to anything. He just bald-faced claims. So I'm assuming he's expecting us to believe that he is right, because he is right. I would also like to point out that this sounds an awful lot like the ends justify the means. And, I'm sure we can all think of at least a few situations where the ends don't in fact justify the means. And now we get to the most interesting and most problematic part of this entire thing.
The America Trump wants to recover is the America of his youth, not out of nostalgia, but because this was an America guided by relentless optimism and supported by grit and determination. An America that had done great things in the past and was eager to do more. An America that was properly confident.
This is a really important clip, because it tells me why Tom here and many other people follow Trump, or at least follow what they believe Trump's ideals to have been. First problem is this is supposedly motivation, and I have no reason to believe this man knows what Trump wants. For all I know, he's never met the man, and with that, motivation should be removed. However, he goes further. He claims that Trump wants to return to the America of his youth, not for nostalgia, but because it was an America of relentless optimism, grit, and determination. So what do we think he actually means? Or, to be more precise, what do I think of when I think of those three things combined with Trump's youth? Well, Trump was born in 46, turned 22 in 68. So if we assume a modern four-year college degree, he would have been graduating college at 22. And 68 does give me a very good idea of a group of people who I would describe as optimistic, full of grit and determination. Yeah, civil rights movement. Now, I could go through each one of these things, and yes, this is from the History Channel, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, for time's sake, I'm going to focus on just pointing out the few things that Trump would have likely have heard about. First up, we have the Brown versus Board thing in 1954. Sure, he was only about 8 years old at the time, but he would have been in school, and he would have heard about the end of at least, while it didn't end it perfectly, it is, of course, something that Trump could have heard about even at the age of 8. Probably would have understood it, but it's a place to start. For us, anyways. Next year, we had these two major things, both of which have been pointed to for a lot of civil rights activists as reasons they got into activism. Emmett Till's murder and Rosa Parks happening in the same year. But as we scroll down, we have 9 students known as the Little Rock Nine who tried to go to the Central High School in Little Rock. The white students were so aggressive, as well as the protesters, because of course they were protesters. They ended up needing federal troops to protect those 9 students, just so they could deal with desegregation. Because of course, we can't have segregated schools. We already talked about that. We have events like the Freedom Riders, where a mixed group of black and whites attempted to test the, whoops, wrong one, where, I forgot to open up the correct information. Anyways, well, we'll just use the History Channel one. So, the Freedom Riders were a group of black and white protesters who were attempting to test Supreme Court decision that ended segregated interstate transport terminals. And this resulted in a whole lot of shenanigans. Eventually, the first bus was firebombed, and the protesters escaped, and then they had to fight for more. Just all sorts of violence that they had to deal with. And yet, only more people showed up. And we have more things like this. We have marches and we have assassinations, and we have police attacking protest movements for no apparent reason. Well, they had reasons, but very poor reasons. And we have more assassinations. Martin Luther King was assassinated. And yet, through all this, people continued to fight. Sure, people like to point at Martin Luther King as the end of the civil rights movement, but it really wasn't. Because nothing ends perfectly on the date you want it to end. And while there's still problems today, there's still people fighting those problems. And that's what I want to point out. While people like this guy will talk about the grit and determination of, well, this time period and other time periods, they seem to forget the people who showed the most grit and determination, the people who are remembered as showing the most grit and determination, are the ones who fought for liberty and for the freedoms and rights of peoples. So, I don't know who or what he's actually talking about, because as we will and have already seen, he's certainly not talking about the civil rights movement. After all, he thinks equality is a lie and a utopian dream. There's one last clip. And yeah, I went back to 4:15. The last clip started at 4:50. And yes, that means we've only been 5 minutes into this video. And we've been watching it at half again speed. So it's a slow one. Anyways, one last clip and then the wrap up.
If there is one thing people know about Donald Trump, is that he, unlike the woke calm, loves America and wants to preserve the American way of life.
I'm not so sure about that. Well, I'm sure he loves America, but I'm not certain he loves the America we want. If he wants to preserve the American way of life, the America of Trump's youth was a time of change, civil law, development, and even unrest at times. It was a time when in flux. It was a time when we had to worry about the Cold War, which, probably not a good thing to bring back. It was a time when we were righting wrongs and bringing equality. It's clear that these aren't the things that Trump wants to preserve. And I know you're asking, well, duh, it's nostalgia. But remember, just a few seconds later, we will be told it's not, in fact, nostalgia. Far more important, in my opinion, is the why I'm talking about this at all. And it's this. There are people who see this all as, they see this as virtues, as things to be looked up for, and as to the things to desire in our own daily lives. So the question is, why do people see this as virtuous? Well, some of it could just be they're similar to Trump and they like having a role model. But there's other problems. There's other things that are a problem. And that is where we're going here today. To the Bible. Ephesians 5:22. Wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and we don't care about the rest. If you believe this, then you can't believe in equality, because you now have, at minimum, a 3-tier system. God, husbands, wives. No middle ground, no equality. And wives, as to the Lord. Your husband tells you to do something stupid, then you have to do the same thing as if, well, when the Lord tells you to do something stupid. Like jump in a pool for no apparent reason. I could go on. There are more verses, and there's more problems. But I wanted to point this one out, because equality is a utopian lie of totalitarian, ignoring the fact that that's just so stupid. But this is the problem. People are reading this book and are assuming it is real. They are assuming everything it says is right, and they are coming to the conclusion that equality, if not wrong, is impossible to do morally. And that's a problem. Now, obviously, not every Christian believes this, and not every Christian follows Trump. So why not? Well, it's probably as individual as the people who are doing it. So, not something we can really summarize this quickly. It is, however, my personal opinion that the more literal you take the Bible, the more of a problem your interpretations of right and wrong are. And that is why I am looking at this today and saying, my name is S3eker, and this is the end of the video. I would ask you to like and subscribe, but it's my first one. So like and subscribe, please.